In the vast, frozen expanses of ancient Finland, where the winds whisper secrets through endless forests of pine and birch, lived a wise and eternal sage named Väinämöinen. He was no ordinary man, born from the foam of the sea and the breath of the goddess Ilmatar. He possessed the gift of song magic, a power that could shape the world itself. His voice could calm raging storms, heal the deepest wounds, or summon the hidden forces of nature. Väinämöinen wandered the lands, his long beard flowing like a river of silver, his eyes holding the wisdom of ages. He played the kantele, an instrument carved from the jawbone of a giant pike, its strings humming with enchanting melodies that echoed across lakes and hills. Far to the north, in the shadowy realms of Lapland, dwelled a young and ambitious youth named Joukahainen. Slim and agile, with skin as pale as fresh snow and hair like raven feathers, he was known for his swift skis and sharp arrows. But more than his hunting prowess, Joukahainen prided himself on his singing voice, believing it unmatched in all the northern wilds. Tales of Väinämöinen's legendary feats reached his ears like distant thunder, stories of how the old sage had sung boats from wood, tamed wild beasts, and even challenged the gods. Jealousy gnawed at Joukahainen's heart like a wolf on bone. "Who is this ancient fool?" he muttered to himself one crisp morning, as the aurora borealis painted the sky in greens and purples. "I, Joukahainen, son of the north, shall prove my superiority. My songs will drown his in oblivion." Driven by this burning arrogance, Joukahainen prepared for his journey. He sharpened his arrows, fletched with eagle feathers, and strapped on his skis, crafted from the finest birch. His bow, strung with sinew from a mighty elk, hung at his side. As he set off southward, the snow crunched rhythmically under his feet, and the cold air bit at his cheeks like tiny needles. The landscape unfolded before him. Vast tundras dotted with frozen lakes, where ice cracked like distant laughter, and forests where wolves howled in chorus with the wind. Days blurred into nights under the endless polar twilight, but Joukahainen's resolve never wavered. He sang to himself as he traveled, practicing verses about the creation of the world, the forging of iron, and the taming of fire, knowledge he had gleaned from elders around flickering campfires. Meanwhile, Väinämöinen traveled in his sleigh, pulled by a sturdy horse whose hooves sparked against the icy paths. He was on his way to seek new runes, ancient words of power hidden in the whispers of the earth. The sage hummed softly, his cantel resting on his lap, its notes blending with the rustle of snow-laden branches. Little did he know that fate was weaving a confrontation that would test the boundaries of pride and wisdom. The paths of the two converged on a narrow trail, flanked by towering pines heavy with frost. The air was thick with tension, the kind that precedes a storm. Väinämöinen's sleigh approached from one end, while Joukahainen skied swiftly from the other. Neither man yielded the way. The sleigh halted with a soft whinny from the horse, and Joukahainen planted his skis firmly in the snow. Their eyes met across the frozen divide, Väinämöinen's gaze calm and piercing, like a still lake reflecting the stars, Joukahainen's fiery and defiant, like embers in a dying fire. "Who dares block the path of Väinämöinen?" the sage boomed, his voice resonating like thunder over distant mountains. Joukahainen sneered, his breath forming clouds in the frigid air. "Move aside, old wanderer. This road belongs to the swift and the strong, not to relics of forgotten times." Väinämöinen smiled faintly, his beard twitching with amusement. "Youth speaks with the boldness of ignorance. Step aside, or let us see whose knowledge runs deeper. Sing your wisdom to me, lad, and perhaps the path will open." Joukahainen laughed, a sharp, brittle sound that echoed off the trees. A singing contest? Very well, ancient one. Prepare to hear the voice of the north. They dismounted. Väinämöinen stepped down from his sleigh with deliberate grace, while Joukahainen kicked free of his skis. The two stood face to face on the snow-packed trail, the wind swirling around them like an invisible audience. The horse snorted softly, sensing the gathering magic. The pines seemed to lean in closer, branches creaking in anticipation. Joukahainen began first. His voice rang out clear and confident, carrying over the frozen silence. He sang of how the earth was plowed for the first time, how seeds were scattered by the hands of Ukko, the sky god, how fish leaped into the rivers at the dawn of creation. The words flowed smoothly, painting vivid pictures of fertile fields and teeming waters. When he finished, he crossed his arms, waiting for approval. Väinämöinen listened without interruption, his expression unchanging. When the last note faded, he spoke quietly. "These are things every child by the hearth knows. Common knowledge, lad. Is that all you carry?" Joukahainen's cheeks flushed beneath the cold. Anger sparked in his eyes. He drew a deeper breath and sang again, this time of iron, how it was born in the fiery heart of the earth, forged by smiths with hammers that rang like bells, tempered in waters blessed by the moon. He described the arrow's flight, fletched with eagle plumes, tipped with deadly barbs. His voice grew louder, more forceful, as if volume alone could win the day. Still Väinämöinen remained unmoved. "Iron and arrows," he murmured, "tools of hunters and warriors. Useful, yes, but not the deepest wisdom." Frustration boiled inside Joukahainen. He had expected admiration, not dismissal. Desperation crept into his tone as he launched into bolder claims. He boasted that he had plowed the broad seas with a single furrow, that he had lassoed the moon and tied the great bear to a pine, that he had captured the winds in his pouch and released them at will. The lies piled higher with each verse, each more extravagant than the last. Väinämöinen's eyes narrowed. The air grew heavier, charged with something ancient and unstoppable. "Falsehood poisons the song," he warned, his voice low, but carrying the weight of mountains. "Truth is the root of power. Lies are brittle branches that snap in the storm." Joukahainen ignored the warning. Pride blinded him. In fury he shouted, "If words will not move you, then steel shall." He reached for his bow, knocking an arrow tipped with venom. But before the string could sing its deadly note, Väinämöinen raised his hand. His lips parted, and the true song began. The melody that poured from Väinämöinen was unlike anything Joukahainen had ever heard. It was not merely sound, it was creation itself made audible. Deep tones rolled like waves crashing on rocky shores. High notes shimmered like sunlight piercing through ice, and beneath it all ran a current of ancient power, older than the forests, older than the stars. The words were runes, sacred syllables drawn from the dawn of time, each one heavy with meaning and force. As the first verse unfolded, the ground beneath Joukahainen's feet began to soften. What had been hard-packed snow turned suddenly to mud, then to thick, clinging mire. His skis, still lying nearby, sank slowly out of sight. He looked down in confusion, then alarm. "What trickery is this?" he cried, trying to step backward, but his boots were already ankle-deep in the bog that had appeared from nowhere. Väinämöinen sang on, unhurried. His voice painted pictures in the air, of the earth's deep belly opening to swallow the proud, of roots reaching up like fingers to grasp the arrogant. With every line, the swamp grew hungrier. Joukahainen's legs sank to the knees. He thrashed, arms flailing, but the more he struggled, the deeper he went. Panic seized him fully now. The cold sludge rose past his thighs, gripping like icy hands. His breath came in short, terrified gasps, fogging wildly in the freezing air. "Stop!" he shouted. "This is madness! Release me!" But Väinämöinen's song did not falter. The melody swelled, majestic and merciless. The bog climbed to Joukahainen's waist, then his chest. He could feel the pressure against his ribs, squeezing the air from his lungs. His bow slipped from numb fingers and vanished beneath the dark surface. In desperation, Joukahainen began to bargain. "Gold!" he gasped. "I have chests of gold buried beneath my father's hall. Take it all." Väinämöinen continued singing, the runes flowing like an unstoppable river. "Stallions." Joukahainen pleaded next. "The swiftest in the north, 10 of them, white as snow, with manes like flame. They are yours." Still the sage sang. The mire reached Joukahainen's shoulders. His arms rested on the surface now, useless. Tears, whether from cold or shame, froze on his lashes. Then, in a voice cracked with terror, he offered his final treasure, "My sister, Aino, the fairest maiden in all Pohjola. Her eyes are like summer lakes, her hair like midnight silk. Take her as your bride, wise Väinämöinen, and spare my life." The song paused. Silence fell, sudden and complete. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. The bog ceased its pull for one long, trembling moment. Joukahainen hung there, half submerged, heart hammering against his ribs. Väinämöinen regarded the youth with eyes that held no anger, only a deep and sorrowful understanding. Slowly, deliberately, he spoke the counter-rune, a verse of release, of earth returning to stillness. The mire shuddered, then receded. It loosened its grip inch by inch, sliding away like a retreating tide. Joukahainen's body rose until he stood once more on solid, frozen ground, drenched, shivering, covered in black mud from neck to toe. He collapsed to his knees, gasping, unable to meet the sage's gaze. Väinämöinen stepped closer. His voice, when he spoke, was gentle yet firm. "You challenged wisdom with pride, and pride has taught you its lesson. Go home, Joukahainen. Tell your sister what bargain you made in your fear. The North will remember this day." Without another word, the eternal singer climbed back into his sleigh. The horse snorted once, and they moved forward along the now clear path, disappearing into the swirling snow. Joukahainen remained kneeling for a long time. When at last he rose, his arrogance was gone, replaced by a hollow ache. He retrieved what remained of his skis, broken and muddied, and began the long journey home, head bowed, spirit humbled, carrying the weight of a promise that would change 3 lives forever. Joukahainen reached his father's hall as night deepened into the endless dark of winter. The lights from the windows glowed like small suns against the blackness. Smoke curled from the chimney, carrying the scent of pine resin and roasting meat. Inside, warmth and laughter awaited, but he felt none of it. He pushed open the heavy door. His family turned at the sound. His mother gasped at the sight of him, clothes torn and filthy, face streaked with frozen tears, eyes haunted. His father, a broad-shouldered hunter, set down his drinking horn. "Son, what has befallen you?" Joukahainen stood silent for a moment, the words sticking in his throat like thorns. Then, in a low, broken voice, he told them everything: the meeting on the trail, the singing contest, the lies, the swamp born of magic, the terror of sinking alive, and finally the desperate bargain. When he spoke Aino's name, a hush fell over the room. His sister, who had been spinning wool by the fire, let the spindle fall from her fingers. It rolled across the floorboards and stopped against the hearth. Aino was 16 summers old, slender and graceful, with skin like new milk and hair that fell in dark waves to her waist. She had always been quiet, thoughtful, content to tend the hearth and gather herbs in the brief summer light. Now her face paled as she understood what her brother had done. "You promised me? To him?" she whispered. Joukahainen could not look at her. "I had no choice. The earth itself was swallowing me." Aino rose slowly. Without a word she walked past him, past her stunned parents, and out into the night. The door closed softly behind her. No one followed. They knew she needed time alone with her grief. Days passed in heavy silence. Aino barely spoke. She moved through the house like a shadow, performing her tasks mechanically. At night she sat by the window, staring at the stars, wondering what kind of man this Väinämöinen was: ancient, powerful, a singer of worlds, and whether he would truly come to claim her. Joukahainen, meanwhile, withdrew into himself. He no longer boasted, he no longer sang. When friends came to hunt or drink, he sat apart, staring into the fire. The lesson had been burned deep. Pride without wisdom leads only to ruin. And far away, Väinämöinen continued his journey, the kantele once more resting on his knee. He thought often of the maiden he had never seen, of the promise made in desperation. Was it right to accept such a gift? Did fate intend this union, or was it merely the consequence of one man's folly? The runes were silent on the matter. Only time would reveal the truth. Winter deepened. The lakes froze solid enough to bear sleighs. The moon rode high and cold. And somewhere in the north, a decision was forming, one that would set in motion sorrows, quests, and the forging of destinies yet unwritten. The story of Joukahainen's Defiance reaches its quiet close not with thunder, but with the soft crackle of a dying fire and the distant howl of wind through bare branches. The young man who once believed his voice could rival the gods returned home broken, his pride stripped away like bark from a fallen tree. He had learned, at terrible cost, that true power lies not in volume or bravado, but in harmony with the ancient laws that govern sky, earth, and heart. Aino, the innocent caught in the web, carried the heaviest burden. Her future, once hers to shape with small dreams of summer berries and quiet evenings, now hung on the arrival of a stranger whose name alone carried the weight of legend. Would he come gently, as a suitor bearing gifts, or would he claim her as payment for a life spared? The Kalevala does not rush to answer. It lets the question linger, like frost on a window pane, slowly revealing its patterns with the rising of the sun. Väinämöinen, the eternal wanderer, pressed onward through snow and twilight. His sleigh cut fresh tracks across the white silence. The kantele sang beneath his fingers, weaving new runes, new possibilities. He had won the contest without raising a hand in violence, proof that song, when rooted in truth, is mightier than any arrow or sword. Yet victory brought no joy, only a quiet certainty that greater trials awaited. The north was stirring. Pohjola's dark mistress, Louhi, watched from her iron halls. The Sampo, that wondrous mill of salt, grain and gold, waited to be forged or stolen. And now this promise, a maiden's hand tied the threads of fate tighter still. So ends the first challenge, not in death or destruction, but in transformation. Joukahainen is humbled, Aino is promised, Väinämöinen is burdened with responsibility. The Kalevala teaches through such moments that every boast carries consequence, every song echoes forever, and every meeting on a frozen path can alter the course of generations. The North remembers. The winds still carry faint traces of that melody, the one that opened the earth and closed a proud heart. And somewhere, in the dance of firelight and shadow, the next chapter waits to be sung.